On this episode, we chat with that friend. Someone who has like a unique everyday skill. Maybe they know how to salsa dance or they play the saxophone. Or like my guest James, they're a bowler. Bowling's one of those activities that most of us associate with like birthday parties or like a reward for winning best Team Diorama. But for James, it's a way of life. He's been bowling as long as he can remember. From dozing off during his parents' league nights as a kid to seeking out unique bowling lanes while on business trips. We also talk about relationships, and ironically, they're a lot like bowling. Let's jump in. Did you tell your kids you're doing this?
They have no idea.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I told my wife I was doing it, obviously, but yeah.
Are you going to surprise them and be like, Dad was on a podcast?
Yeah, I'll show it to them later. The parts that I can.
How old are your kids?
9 and 10.
Yeah, so they're already they already know stuff.
Yeah, they know more than they should probably.
Yeah,
they're too damn smart for their own good.
That's what I'm saying, man. My daughter's 3. She don't know shit. Well, I mean, she knows everything. You know what I'm saying?
She thinks she knows everything.
Yeah. She's like, we'll be like going to school, and she'll be like, Daddy, you were supposed to turn up here. I'm like, I know where to go. Like, I'm the one driving you to school. Like, settle down back there, backseat driver.
Sounds like my 9-year-old. She's the mother hen of the family. She makes sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, when they're supposed to be doing it, and that they're doing it right, and tattles on everybody when they do it wrong.
Where'd she get that from?
I have no idea. It ain't me.
Did you just subliminally throw your wife under the bus? Like, that ain't me.
It ain't me.
Oh, man.
She is definitely the mother hen. Drives us all crazy.
That's funny. Oh, man. You know, I didn't, because you're one of my fraternity brothers, I didn't read too much of your bio. You know what I mean? Because I mainly brought you in for bowling.
All right.
And dad advice.
Okay.
I want some girl dad advice. What's some girl dad advice you can give me?
Oh man. Did
you say 9 and 10?
9 and 10, yeah.
Oh
they're
man,
14 months apart.
That means that they're gonna be like teenagers at the same time.
They practically already are the way that they act.
Really?
Man. My 10-year-old's got the sass and the attitude of a 13-year-old, 14-year-old. I mean, she's her and her mom are already button heads. And what's funny about it is they're exactly alike. You know, my wife jokes all the time that her mother used to threaten her and say, you know, I hope you grow up and have a kid exactly like you. Well, it's exactly what happened. And it's so funny because she terrorizes her. I mean, it's just like, she has to stop herself. She goes, "Oh my God, that was me." It's like, that's what I used to do, you know?
Isn't that so weird?
Yeah.
Like, it's so weird that we do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you do anything like your parents?
I'm a lot like my dad.
Yeah.
I'm a lot like my dad. Yeah.
He likes a good Philly cheesesteak.
I don't know if I've ever seen him eat a Philly cheesesteak, but no, I mean, my dad was a bowler too. You know, like I am. So that's where I got that from. And I mean, he was in business, which is where I got that from. And, you know, there's a lot of similarities between me and my dad. I'm definitely more like my dad in life than I am like my mother, but I got a lot of qualities from her too, for sure. But
well, somehow one is always dominant, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And also, okay, let me ask you this. As you got older, did you get more kind of like both of them? Does that make sense?
Just to an extent. I mean, I learned how to keep, you know, my area tidy and clean and, you know, do the dishes and do the laundry and the things that I do just normally out of habit. Obviously, I got all that from my mother.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, she definitely trained me to clean up after myself and take care of myself. And then my dad, I kind of got my fiery temper from him, and not that he ever really expressed it much, but you know, it's there. I always knew it was there. Like he had the fear of God in me, you know, from the early on, you know, that I was scared of, you know, pissing off my dad or, you know, doing something wrong and disappointing him. That's probably the right word. I was more worried about disappointing my father than I was like a lash out or anger or anything like that. But because that really never happened with him. He's a silent killer. Like the silence is what hurts you, not
stoic.
Yeah, very stoic. Yeah. Yeah. So I always had a very fiery temper growing up. I was a hothead for sure. Even, you know, 25 years ago when we knew each other as college kids, you know, you saw some of that in me, I'm sure.
Well, you know what's so crazy is I'm going to work out and I'm driving and I'm just thinking about college and you and like how I know you and blah, blah, whatever. And I was like, man, I don't remember anything about college. I mean, like, even like, you know, I was thinking like Denny, because I mean, I lived with Denny, right? And I was like, God, I don't even remember things with Denny. And I was like, I wonder what James remembers about me or what he remembers about college. I mean, you saying that you're a hothead sounds familiar, but like, I don't really remember an instance where I was like, dang, you know what I mean? Like, now I feel like I was a hothead. Was I a hothead?
I don't remember you that you were always for me. Of course, you know, you're a year or two ahead of me, but for me, you were always very like, you were the cool guy. Like
everybody keeps saying that. I wish I would have known.
You really were. I mean, like everybody wanted to like emulate you a little bit, like your style, your swagger, everything about Scottie G, man. Scottie was the cool guy, you know, and it's like all the parties you were like literally like the leader of the party for the most part, you know, half the time. But it was funny because I mean, Denny was always right there with you, obviously, and some of the other guys, Jared Turley, you know, obviously right there with you, but it was funny to watch. And I was the one I got labeled as the tightwad, you know. I was the guy that, you know, didn't party very hard, didn't go out too much, was always busy doing something else, whether it was bowling or work or whatever, you know, but I was always real careful. But I had reasons behind that, you know, kind of tying in the conversation about my dad. When I came to school, my dad was like, you've got 4 years to get out of there. After 4 years, I stopped paying for it. And that scared the shit out of me. Yeah. Quite honestly, I was like, okay, I know what my mission is now. I know what I have to do. And I made damn sure I did it. And that stuck with me. And he told me that my senior year in high school. Like he said, here, this is what's going to happen. And so I was well prepared and all that. And that's the way it happened. I was out in 4 years. I took summer school to make sure I got all the credits to get out. So.
Okay. How old are your parents like right now?
Dad is 74. No, he turned 74 this year. And so my mom is 70. She just turned 70.
So, you know, there's something about that generation that's what they did.
Absolutely.
Because my parents, like, there's so many similarities in the stories you're saying in my dad and stuff like that. The only difference is that like, it did scare me when they said you got to be out of college in 4 years, but then when they saw it was not going to happen, they lit up a little bit. You know what I mean? He was like, oh, I'll let you off the hook a little bit, and they took care of it. Yeah, but it's crazy. I just think, like, you know, it's not coincidence that I have so many people around close to my age, that have people close to my parents that have this similar experience of responsibility and sometimes perfection. Right. And like work ethic and like all that kind of stuff. Like, and then it's wild that, like, you know, it's kind of like my generation that kind of let these kids down.
I don't agree with that. I think our generation is still doing it right. I think the people that came behind us, 15 or 20 years behind us, are the ones that have completely fucked it up.
How old are you?
I'm 43.
Oh,
I'll be 43 in May.
You're a lot closer to me than I thought. Yeah. So like, yeah. Well, I mean, there is a level of, you know, there's a lot of us that had kids like way younger, and kind of, you know, maybe, you know, was like, hey, we want your life to be easy and great too. And maybe took that a little overboard. You know what I mean? I'm glad I had my kid now. I'll tell you that. Because you had your kids apparently later,
30,
right?
I was 31, I think, when my first daughter was born. You know, and that was always my goal. So I was lucky that that's the way it shaped up, because I'd been married once before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my wife and I now, we just celebrated our 11th anniversary. So I went 8 years single after my first marriage ended. And so I was extremely lucky that no kids were involved there.
Yeah, for sure.
Extremely lucky, because that could have been a total disaster.
Easy. I mean, you so if like the woman you had kids, that would have been a disaster.
The divorce.
Yeah.
Total disaster.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. If you'd had with your first wife.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was very lucky that that's not the way that went down.
Yes.
But anyway, moving on from that, it's interesting because my wife and I have shared this story with each other a number of times, and she had some very rough experiences around the same age, around the same time. That we always say that all that negativity and all those bad experiences is what prepared us for each other. It's what brought us together. And so we're thankful. Although it was terrible at the time and a horrible experience, we're thankful that we went through that, because it ultimately led us to each other. And we truly believe that. We've said that to each other countless times, over the years. So it's pretty interesting to think back and how everything kind of moved and shook and shaped up, the experiences we had in that period before we got back together. The part you don't know is that she and I have known each other since we were 4 years old.
And so you all go to school together?
We went to daycare together as little kids.
Memory of it?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we were each other's first boyfriend and girlfriend.
Oh, fancy.
When we were 4 or 5 years old. We were each other's first kiss in the back of a daycare bus. When we were I think we were 5 at the time. We went to each other's birthday parties when we were little kids. And it happened that she moved across town, and we kind of just stopped.
It's pre-internet,
pre-cell phones, so there was no communication. We had no way of keeping in touch with each other. So we just kind of lost touch. And it's funny, we grew up in the same town. We both grew up in Irving, and, she went to MacArthur High School, which was just on the other side of the north side of town from where I went at Nimitz. And we were running in the same circles the whole time. It's like she was in drill team and I was playing baseball and in marching band, and, we were doing all these things. So we were at the same football games at the same time, on the same football field sometimes, and we would run into each other occasionally at the banquets and stuff you used to have in high school. So we'd see each other and say hi or whatever. And she's like, man, she tells me this now. She's like, man, I wish I would have just, made a stronger effort to say hi to you or whatever. And I was like, and then we talk about it later. It's like, but if you had, we probably wouldn't be married now.
Right.
So we go around circles around that all the time, but it's interesting. It's an interesting story that, we've literally known each other most of our lives, but there was a 25-year span where we didn't.
It's similar with me and my girlfriend. We dated once before. Things didn't work out. Trials and tribulations that led us back to here feels much better and more secure. I think, it's so weird. Like how they always go, if you love something, let it go, blah, 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 whatever. But, if you could truly do that, not only could you minimize damage, right? So it's say y'all had dated before, had a bad breakup, right? You might not ever get over that breakup, but you remember that you might not not a need to have that fight in the first place because it was bad timing. And you just go, it's bad timing. Maybe this is something in the future. And I think that if people kind of leaned into that a little bit more, your life would go a little bit smoother. You know what I mean? And things will come back around if they're supposed to come back.
That's
around.
Maturity.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's maturity.
I didn't think of it that way.
That's emotional maturity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, most people at that age, I was, 22 when my first wife and I, re-met. I mean, we went to high school together. And so it all kind of kicked off from there, but I was 22 years old. I didn't know anything. I damn sure didn't have any business getting married, but there were lots of our friends that got married at 18, straight out of high school. And 90% of those that I know of are not married. They didn't last. Most of them don't stay together. I do know a few that have, but it's tough, man.
Well, you know, you talk about emotional maturity, right? So like I waited until like I was 40 to get married, right? Thinking that, okay, I waited, I bet, you know, blah, 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 whatever. I'm married like a year and a half and get divorced, right? Because still at 40, my emotional maturity was not where it needed to be. You know what I mean? And if it had been, that whole sequence of events might have been something totally different. But apparently I needed that event to find it. And then now that I'm here, it's
that was your wake up call.
Yeah. And I've talked about this before on my podcast. Like, I think that sometimes like God will throw a lot of wake up calls at you and you just kind of keep ignoring them until one hits you really hard in the face. And you go, oh, okay, I'm paying attention now. I mean, but you know, the quicker you recognize those things, the more you can kind of make a change on a positive influence on your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, some people get the message a lot earlier than others, you know, and some people get that punch in the face a lot earlier than others.
But then some people just never stop getting punched in the face.
They just keep ignoring it.
They're just like, my life just sucks. And it's like, well, it could be better. It could be a little bit better if you would stop and just like put the shovel down, stop digging a hole.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. It's interesting how the way that we see media and production done on TV and in movies shapes the way that we think it's supposed to be done, you know, in real life. Like unless you have specific training around it, you know, and you like really study it in school and stuff like that or whatever, and work in the field for a while. It's interesting.
Here's what I like. I like it when people tell me that I'm doing my social media wrong. I'm like, wrong according to who? I don't get. I like. You're not gonna hit the algorithm. Do I look like I give a fuck about hitting the algorithm?
Is there a formula for this shit?
I mean, of course there is, but I have examples out the wazoo of people just breaking holes in that formula, depending on who they are and what they do. So you can tell me, oh, you need this to get in the algorithm, but if you're supposed to be found, or if it's supposed to happen, it's gonna happen. That's what I believe. That might be stupid, but.
Well, let me ask you this. If everybody does it exactly the same way, how does that change the algorithm? Or how do you get found in a sea of everything the same?
Right, but being different.
You have to be different. Absolutely.
So I do my social media the way I want to do it. I do my things the way I want to do it. I'm slightly unapologetic for it. I'll apologize a little bit. Like I'm like, so I don't on my coaching account, I don't follow people on Instagram. I follow 6 things because I have a thing with the number 6. And so I follow 6 things and 2 of them are me and 2 of them are my school and 2 of them are fitness stuff. And I don't follow people. And I have to explain that like, I just don't do that. Cause like you feel bad when someone follows you on a thing, you feel like you have to follow them back. I mean, or a lot of people feel like you have to follow them back. And then that's in how you end up like with all these like bikini girls, like following them all. I'm just kidding. All these
you
fake.
Make the mistake of stopping on one, and then all of a sudden that's all you get.
Okay, look, I had a conversation. I had a conversation with one of my clients, and this was the best because we did a little like test, like right on the spot. If you're a heterosexual male, okay, more than likely, like your search on your Instagram is going to be something you're into, and boobs, right? It's going to be bowling, you know, knitting and boobs. And like, I was like, what's yours? And he goes, mine is cars. And God, what else is he into? Like cars, music, and boobs. And I was like, mine's tattoos, sneakers, and boobs.
Look, man, my wife told me a long time ago, she said, if you ever stop looking, that's when I'll be nervous.
Right. When you're moving on.
Yes. She was like, that's when I'll be worried is when you stop looking. Like we're talking about, you know, when you pass by a hot girl in the mall or walking down the street or something like that. She goes, if you don't notice and you're not paying attention, she's like, I find her hot. It's like, if you don't notice that, then I'm worried about you.
Well, I think that everyone notices beautiful and unique people.
As they should.
You know what I mean? Like,
as they should.
You know, and it's kind of like, I've had this conversation a lot about like my tattoos it brings on a lot of attention, attention that I was not expecting necessarily when I did it. But then now it just feels like not a responsibility, but like when people have enough balls to come up and say something, to be polite, because they are noticing that I am different and acknowledging it by saying like, hey, that's cool. I just want to let you know, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah, there's definitely a respectful way to do it versus, again, a guy noticing a hot girl going down the street next to his wife or next to his girlfriend, to sit there and gawk and stare and make a obscene comment or something is obviously not the right way to notice, right? But unless you're joking with your significant other about it.
Well, and and like, can I just say, there are significant others that are cool with that shit. Okay. But there are some that are not, and you need to know who you're married to.
100%.
Right?
100%.
In the sense of being respectful, not in the sense of like, oh, well, I can't do whatever I want, but no, just being respectful of like when to be able to joke and when not to be able to joke. And that's just like every human being on the planet.
Exactly.
Not even your wife. You know what I mean? And even your kids. Be nice to your kids.
People get so caught up in their own wants and needs and desires, and they get so defensive so fast. When somebody challenges them, and I've had numerous conversations even throughout my business career that, I tell people, you gotta settle down a little bit. You gotta calm down. You're trying to defend your point so strongly that all it's coming across as is aggressiveness, and you're defending yourself because you feel like that because somebody disagrees with you about something or has a different point of view, that they're attacking you. They're not attacking you. They're expressing their viewpoint just the same way you are, but you're taking that as an attack, as an assault on your beliefs or your thought processes or whatever it may be, and I've seen it so many times, and I have to stop myself from jumping all over that person when I see that happen, because that's kind of one of my pet peeves, particularly in business, but even with friends, it's like when I see somebody just get ultra defensive, I just want to like slap them upside the head and say, what the hell are you doing? Calm the fuck down. You're carrying on a point and escalating a situation that there is a 0 point in escalating.
You tell me if this works. Taking your opinion and just shoving it down someone's throat. Never. Right. And so if you really want to get your point across, you really have to kind of understand the language of the other person. So by asking them questions and trying to understand who they are, it's easier to get your point across of what you're trying to say because you know how to speak to them instead of trying to shove your opinion down their throat. And there's never a good time. I was trying to think, is there a good time? Like maybe like with your kids, if like they're gonna like they're hanging off a cliff, you're like grab my hand or something like that, something super serious. But I don't think any time your opinion is really validated by forcing it on someone. I
agree. And unfortunately, so many people younger than us don't feel that way. They don't understand that. They're in, quite honestly, the other way around too. You can go to people a lot older than us that are very opinionated, and there's a right way and a wrong way, and they know what that right way and wrong way is. There is no other way about it.
Well, look, I'm gonna give old people a break, okay? Because they have lived a lot of life.
They grew up in a different time.
Well, it's not even that. Yeah. It's like they lived a lot of life, okay? And they're towards the end. I mean, let's be honest. Shit gets kind of bleak. You know what I mean? All your friends are dying. You know what I mean? You're getting close to death. Shit ain't working like it was anymore. You can't remember where your car keys are. You know what I mean? So like to have like organization and know like I am Republican or whatever it is to know certainties about yourself is like good. Here's where like with younger kids, like them shoving their opinions down people's throats, I think is not effective. Because like what they're really kind of doing is going like, you need to change for me to feel okay. Mm-hmm. And you can ask that of people until you're blue in the face, but I mean, good luck. I mean, that's not that person's responsibility. Their responsibility is not to change for you. Your responsibility is to change for yourself. You know, like you said, like, so obviously you said you had a temper. You must have like done some level of controlling it, because now you're seeing other friends. You're going, ooh, temper, defensiveness. You're going like, hey, you should stop. Right. So that was a change you had inside of you. You didn't ask nobody to go like, hey, can y'all stop like making me mad?
I'll tell you a quick story, because, just growing up, obviously, I was a competitive bowler since the age of 8 years old. And there were some times, I'm going to say I was maybe a teenager. I think I was a teenager at this point. So this is middle school, high school. I was bowling in tournaments or whatever. And I grew up surrounded by competitive bowlers and many of them are out on the PBA tour right now and have been for a while. These are the kids I bowled youth league with, and there's a pretty hefty list of people that are still very, 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 successful in the sport and have achieved a lot, won a lot, done some pretty incredible things. And there was a tournament that I bowled in that I got so mad, so furious that I was losing to a girl. And she was...
This is obviously before you had daughters, right?
Oh, yeah. She was an incredible bowler, and I knew it. And I messed up. I screwed up. It was all me. And I was so pissed. I literally picked up a chair and threw it probably 4 pairs of lanes down.
No way.
And my mother was there.
Oh.
She got up, walked out of the building, went and sat in the car for the rest of the tournament. And when I finally came out and got in the car, she was like, don't ever do something like that again. You embarrassed me so bad, and she just laced into me for the next half hour on the way home. I mean, it was like I was 2 centimeters tall by the end of that conversation, and it's one of those things. That was one of my wake up calls. I remember that situation so vividly, and I couldn't have been but 13 or 14 years old. And that was one of my wake up calls that, hey, you really got to get this temper in check. Because I would get set off by something and I would rage for hours, not raging on people, not beating anybody up, not breaking the law or any crap like that. But I've punched holes in walls. I've punched my fist through a door in my bedroom. I've done stupid stuff like that. But that was one of my wake up calls. And I had a couple of others, throughout the years after that. And then I finally got it a little bit more under control. It's funny how it always seems to center around bowling. Like when I really have the outbursts, I've done things like, rip my shirt off, at the end of a tournament or something because I was pissed I missed a spare or something like that.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me you won.
No, I didn't win. It wasn't a celebratory rip off. It was like the rip my jersey off and throw it on the ground and stomp on it because I was so mad I lost or whatever. But, and I've don't tell any bowling centers this, but I've beaten up a few paper towel dispensers in bathrooms, and kickball returns and that kind of crap. And I got called out on it a couple of times. And a gentleman that's not with us anymore, unfortunately, a very well-respected member of the bowling community, was bowling in one of his tournaments. He ran some tournaments in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for a long time. And I had an outburst like that. And he basically called me into the office, and it literally felt like going to the principal's office because I respected the hell out of him. And he said, look, I really like that you bowl my tournaments, but if you ever do anything like that again, you're never going to bowl another one. I will not allow it. And so that was like another one of those big wake up calls, big slap in the face. And, and I deserved it. I 100% deserved it. And it took a few of those before I finally started figuring out how to get that under control, and I had some good coaches. I had some good coaches in college, bowling for Southwest Texas. I had, some good coaches even after then that I worked with that helped me kind of rechannel that frustration into more productive thoughts and more competitive thoughts that would actually help me in my game as opposed to completely disrupt it because, everybody knew me, bowling with me growing up and stuff like that, that once I lost my shit, my scores would tank. It's like, you're done. You're not going to shoot anything for the rest of the day because you're so mad, and that's pretty consistent across that sport is
I think that's pretty consistent in life.
across any sport. You're completely losing focus. You're completely losing everything, that you're just so angry and clouded by anger. You can't function anymore, and that was me. That was me for a lot of years, but I stayed with it.
You were talking about, did you get a pretty good handle on all this before you met your wife?
Yeah.
I mean, relative, right? Like, everybody gets upset, but I guess what I'm kind of getting at is like, you were talking about like timing of like you and your wife and dating before.
Mhm.
I mean, really, would your wife date that dude?
No.
Yeah.
No.
You know what I mean? So like,
no.
You had to grow.
She didn't even know that guy.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
That's what I'm saying. So like, you had to grow out of that to become someone that was worthy of dating a wonderful person. You know what I mean? And I think that's another thing that people miss about timing. They're like, oh, shit ain't happening for me. Well, like, check yourself. Like, everything, you good? Everything good? Are you a viable catch? Like, are you someone that people want to date? You know what I mean?
No, you're dead on, man. It's a great point. Thankfully she never knew that guy, and not to say that there haven't been times where she's seen it flare up here and there.
Sure.
And, we've certainly been through our trials and tribulations as a couple, just like any couple, but I will say that I'm very proud of how we've managed to get through it. I mean, we've pissed each other off last week. I mean, it's not something that ever really goes away.
Right.
It's just, you learn how to deal with it. You learn how to get through it and move on.
Well,
and you're committed to each other strongly enough that just because something like that happens, you're not ready to pack your shit and walk out the door. Whereas a lot of couples, they have a bad fight or a bad knockdown drag out and they're ready to pack their shit and leave. Well, if you ever get to that point, you're not fully committed to that relationship. You're not fully committed to that person. No way. You should never be ready unless it's an abusive relationship and it's repeated abuse and things like that. That I totally get.
Sure.
Absolutely. And I'll open the door for you, but when if you're fully committed to your partner, you're fully committed to your marriage, then, a big fight, a big blow up is not going to end it. Catastrophic, things like adultery and the list goes on. I mean, sure, I get that, that's what happened in my first marriage, but, there's certainly some major things that can happen to end things and to be the final straw. But, just the standard, trying to get along with each other, trying to live with each other, there's got to be some mutual respect and some mutual commitment that gets you through those things,
Well, I think, okay, fights are inevitable. But there is a nice way to fight and there's a not nice way to fight.
I agree.
You know what I mean? And you have to, talk to your partner about what are our ground rules for discussing things and have great communication around that. And understand that if you lose your shit, that your partner can go like, hey, you're losing your shit. Please stop. And you go, oh, yes, you're right. I'm recognizing that as well. I am stopping. You know what I mean? And that's what becomes, because then now you're doing damage control of like how bad this fight could be. What are you going to say about her mother? Shit like that. You know what I mean? And so like, I think that awareness, like to kind of slow things down, and awareness like helps out a lot. Just taking that time.
And that's really hard.
It's fucking incredibly hard. Because you're in the middle of a really intense battle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like you're like quarterback, like somebody just made you quarterback of a football team. You know nothing about football, and they're like, hike, and you're just like running around trying to make decisions and be nice at the same time. It's really, really hard. It's hard. Yeah, it's incredibly hard.
Yeah, it's the fight or flight response in some instances. It's like, how do you stop yourself from just completely removing yourself from the situation, leaving the room or leaving the house, and certainly I've been through this in my marriage, but, just stomping out mad, getting in the car, driving off fast, squealing the tires, that whole thing, coming back a few hours later. You know, we've done that. We kind of committed to each other to not do that. You know, let's not do that anymore. That's really freaking dangerous, you know, to go peeling out of the street, driving fast, you know, doing something stupid. So how do we slow it down just enough to where we can have a conversation and talk, even if we're still raising our voices at that point? How can we communicate without separating?
Well, I think once like defensiveness sets in, almost with one person, it's almost to kind of domino the next person. And then once that's there, nobody's really listening anyway. You know what I mean?
The only way you stop it is shut your mouth.
Yeah.
That's the only way you stop it.
And so, you know, I'm kind of an advocate of, if you're the type of person that does need a break, you need to not squeal your tires and run out of the driveway, but ask, I would like to take a break. And I will come back and we can talk about this at X point in time, and give that person a date in which you come back, or, you know, a time in which you're going to talk about it. And then even if you show up for the time, you go, hey, I'm not quite ready. Can we do it tomorrow or whatever? But at least keep the line of communication going. You know what I mean? But ultimately, you would like to be able to solve most problems in the moment, you know, and if you have good communication, you should be able to on some level.
As men, you know, and this is so often the case, as men, we're fixers.
Yeah.
Right. We're programmed to be fixers. We want to solve problems. We want to solve them right then, you know, and oftentimes I've found that the women don't necessarily think the same way, right? They're not interested in solving the problem right now. They're interested in one of two things. Usually it's getting their thoughts and feelings out and expressing their emotion or whatnot. And oftentimes we respond in kind. We express our emotion as a rebuttal to their emotion, right? And that's how it escalates. But you know, they're either interested in saying something to you right then and there, or they're not interested in talking to you at all in that moment. And to your point, you know, and I've made the mistake many a times of trying to continue to get my point across, you know, and not just letting the situation separate for the moment, because I'm fired up now. My emotions are going. I'm charged, and I gotta
shove that opinion down her throat.
Well, I either want to shove it down her throat, or I want to like get it handled now, so I'm not hanging on to it.
Yeah,
you know, and so that's really hard sometimes, because we tried to make the commitment a long time ago of never going to bed angry. Well, that's not possible. You know, there are going to be times you're going to go to bed angry.
Well, I think, you know, you can go to bed upset or unsettled or something like that. But like being like straight up mad or angry at a person, like there has to be a way where you can go like, hey, I really don't like you right now a lot. You know what I mean? But I do love you. And even though I'm upset, you know, we should probably go to bed. Yeah. You know, but it takes like just one person trying to be the level head. And sometimes it's like nobody wants to put their weapons down. You know what I mean?
I will say that I have tried to be the level head in some of those situations sometimes. And usually it just gets her fired up all over again.
Well, because, you know, can I say that thing? That's a pretty normal experience, right? But as someone that I practice it, I'm practicing what I preach, right? Mm-hmm. If arguments and things have always been one way, like with passive aggressiveness and like squealing out of the driveway and doing the things, you know, when you go like, you know, you try to be level headed, it's automatically going to be picked up as passive aggressive.
Right.
Right. So you got to do that a lot of times. Mm-hmm. Before someone will go like, you know, because they got their weapons up, like you passive aggressive. And they're like, okay, so you're really not being passive aggressive.
Right.
And they're setting their weapons down. But somebody has to keep the boat steady for the other person to go, it's not rocking. You know what I mean? And the more you can find that inside yourself, the more it's going to help your relationship. But again, that is your change. Like we were talking about earlier, change. Like that's your change. You have to make that change. You know, and it's tough, you know. Let me tell you something. My girlfriend did not respond well when I first started doing that. But now she trusts me. She trusts me that I'm not being like, if I tell her, I'll go like, hey, I feel like you need a break. Like, I feel like that I'm big. This is too much right now. She used to be like, I don't need no break. Right. But now she's like, yeah, like I probably could use a break. Let's take a break. Let's meet back in 30 minutes. All right, cool. You know what I mean? And like, it's just a much better way to have a conversation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'm all for, you know, taking a step back, calming down, reducing the emotional strain, you know, all the anxiety that might be involved in it, you know, whatever that is, taking a step back and doing that. But again, that's really hard sometimes. You know, it's one of those things that you, again, back to emotional immaturity, you have to recognize it first. You know, if you can't recognize it, that's when you have to do this. That's when you have to take a step back, or that's when you have to just flat out shut up and don't say another word and let them get their point across, let them speak, get it out and air it out before you say another word. Because if you come back at that moment, it just continues to escalate. So you have to know, and you have to be aware enough to hit pause. You know,
I'm a pretty emotional man. Okay. And I can tell you as a fact, I have had conversations and discussions. Some people might call them arguments with my girlfriend, in which I said almost near nothing. And she was like, that was a good conversation. And I was like, all right, you know what I mean? And even though I'm an emotional guy, when we talk about guys and they don't want to talk about their feelings as much. So don't shut the fuck up and don't. And then let her, because girls a lot of times do want to get things out. They do want you to know how they feel. And, you know, just be quiet and listen and try to learn something. Try to learn something new that you don't know about your spouse that like could possibly help you in the future. And so now you've done a couple of things. One, you haven't got yourself in more of a shithole than you were already in. Two, you learned something new possibly about your spouse to make it better in the future. And three, she's going to think that y'all had a great conversation and really came to a conclusion. I mean, is there any losers in this situation?
And one of the key points in that was she feels heard.
Well, it's important for people to feel heard.
That's one of the things that I've had to learn, you know, and that's in particular in my marriage is my wife really wants to be heard. It's very important to her to feel heard. So it's tough for me sometimes to resist the temptation of snapping back with a response or saying what I think, you know, when she's still trying to make her point, you know, because you start interrupting each other and it just snowballs. It snowballs immediately. I mean, it's almost impossible to stop it once it gets to that point. You know, so it took a number of heated discussions / arguments, you know, for me to realize that, look, it's just really important for her. And I'm a better husband when I shut up and listen.
I don't know if this is good or not. I don't know if this is good advice, but this is what happens with me. So I try really hard to be a good listener, you know, but ultimately sometimes your partner says something and you're like, what? Say what, Willis? What?
Say that again.
Say that, what the fuck you talking about? I did what? I made you feel what? Right? And at that moment, even if I'm trying to be a good listener, in my brain, I'm out. So a lot of times I'll kind of let her finish her sentence and I'll go, look, I really have something I need to say, and I need to say it now. And I just need to make this one statement that I don't think that I did blank or whatever it is. Right. And now you can proceed. And I'm gonna try, but like, sometimes I just stop and go like, if I don't get this thought, I'm just not listening to you. So you might as well stop talking, like, cause I'm not listening, but that takes my own self-awareness to do that. And then my partner trusting me that when I say I'm not listening anymore, that doesn't mean I'm not listening to you. It means that, like, because something that's going on with me, I'm currently no longer listening to nothing, because all I'm thinking about is how mad I am about this statement that you made. So I'm just going to say like, hey, that upset me. I don't think that's true or whatever. And then you can continue, you know? And I think that could be helpful. But I mean, again, it takes a tremendous amount of practice and trust because let me tell you something, as good as I am at trying not to take anything passive aggressively that comes off my partner. There are still moments where like she says something, I'm like, what the fuck you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's still,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because I think it's inevitable because that happens a lot in our lives. You know what I mean? Externally, a lot of, you know, people you pass and friends, people in the mall, somebody at the store, somebody will be passive aggressive. So especially if that's something sensitive for you or they're tackling a sensitive subject for you, you might be defensive, right? And then you're just like, that guy is being a hole.
Mm-hmm.
You know? See, this is so great. This is what I love about just like, so now we've been talking for an hour. You know what I mean? You want a drink?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, let's take a drink break.
You can find me with Swag Bowling. That's that's the company I represent. But yeah, I've been bowling for a long time, man.
Okay, shut back the fuck up. Shut up. So the company you bowl for,
Swag.
It's called Swag Bowling.
SWAG.
Fuck yes. How did that come about? How did you get hooked up with Swag
So
Bowling?
no, it's California Bowling LLC it was the name of the company, and that's the website. So CaliforniaBowlingLLC.com. But one of the brands of bowling balls that they started producing is Swag, SWAG.
And the bowling ball is it an acronym for something?
No, not
It's
necessarily. No.
Are these swaggy bowling balls?
They are, dude. The artwork is pretty sweet.
Okay. Like, so tell me about these swaggy bowling balls.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of different color pours and stuff like that, but it's more of an edgy feel to the artwork, to the logo.
It's like
obviously.
skulls and like roses and shit.
No, there's another bowling ball brand out there that did that. So we're not like them necessarily, but it's just a different take on positioning, right, and brand positioning. They're the originators of some brands that have been around for a long time. So like Lane Masters was a brand that goes back to the 70s, right? So they're the owners of that brand. So Lane Masters, and Lordfield is the name of a brand that they have that's actually predominantly in Korea. So all of our bowling balls are actually made in South Korea now. Lane Masters used to be hand poured and handmade in Stockton, California. So that they were the last remaining bowling ball manufacturer that actually handmade the bowling balls, hand poured, all of it.
Okay. Okay.
Don't even ask me to tell you how that's done. Because
No. But like, okay. What is a bowling ball made out of? Like when you say it's hand poured, what are they pouring?
Yeah, so it's synthetic compounds, resins, things that they're essentially in powder and liquid form that harden when they're cooled and stuff like that. So there's a lot of chemistry involved that I don't fully understand. Sure. But if you think about what the design of a bowling ball, most of your high performance bowling balls, like so it's the stuff that the pros are throwing on tour and stuff like that. They consist of a core, a weight block that could be a myriad of different shapes. They could either be symmetrical in shape or they could be asymmetrical and have like an odd piece shooting off in a certain direction or whatnot. But then around that core is, for some bowling balls, they're called 3-piece balls. So there's a filler, and so there's a filler material. And then there's a cover stock material. The cover stock material is on the outside of the ball. That's what you really see. That's the colors. That's the shininess or the dullness, depending upon the surface treatments of the ball. I'm getting really freaking technical here, but
keep going.
But it's there's other designs of balls that are 2-piece balls where it's literally just core and the rest of the material is the same. There's no filler. So those are a little bit more rare. They're a little bit more expensive to make. Because of the amount of that cover stock material they have to use. But yeah, so there's all kinds of different ways to make a bowling ball. There's plastic, polyurethane, there's urethane balls. There's, the old days, our dads threw rubber balls, back in the day. But now there's, most of the high performance balls are some variation of resin. So there's a synthetic resin. And it can be, the chemical compound of that resin can determine how much a bowling ball hooks or doesn't hook, right? And then there's another type of ball called a hybrid, so that's another technicality within the chemistry that It's a ball that's kind of a mix between a solid cover and a pearl cover. So the difference there is a pearl will be typically shinier or have a metallic looking material that you can actually see. So you can actually see kind of a glisten in the cover stock of the ball. And some manufacturers do sanded pearls versus shiny pearls and stuff like that, but it's still pearl. It's a pearl finish to the cover. Solids, they don't have that extra material in there. So the solids are just a very dull looking solid color. Sometimes you can see variations in color pour, or they'll do a little additive material in there that's just makes it look neat, but it's still a solid. It doesn't have any of that extra pearl.
Yeah.
The key point of difference there is pearls typically go longer down the lane before they hook. Solids typically start hooking earlier. That's the key point of difference between those two.
How customizable can a ball be? Because you were talking about the core being different shapes. Would someone want their core a certain shape to make a certain spin, to break at a certain time, to feel
100%.
a certain? Okay, so like, how customizable can a ball get?
So one of the real tricky intricacies in the sport of bowling is how the bowling ball is drilled, right? So I mentioned the difference between a symmetrical versus an asymmetrical core, right? So in a symmetrical core, you have what is called the pin. So that's essentially the center of the ball, the pin. And then you have the CG, which is the center of gravity. So there's those two markings on the ball, right? There's the dot, which is the pin. And then usually the CG is some form of logo or a star or an X or whatever that marks the center of gravity of the bowling ball. In an asymmetrical ball, you have a third marking called the mass bias. Don't ask me to explain what mass bias is because I can't. But mass bias basically, in proximity to the thumb hole of the ball, can determine how aggressive or less aggressive the reaction of that ball is, right? So that's a variation in an asymmetrical core. So where you put the fingers and thumb as it relates to those markings can kind of fine tune and tweak how that bowling ball reacts for that bowler. So if you have a bowler that, say, doesn't have a whole lot of revolutions on the ball, you called it spin. So I'm going to say revolutions, but if they're not like really getting a lot of revolutions on the ball, we call them a lower rev player. They could be speed dominant, which means they throw the ball really hard, but they don't really spin it a lot, or they don't really get a lot of revolutions on it. You're going to lay a ball out differently for that bowler than you will for a bowler that has a lot of revolutions on the ball and maybe more what we call rev dominant, meaning they don't throw it, 19 miles an hour, but they really get out of it. They really get a lot of what we call getting a lot of hand in it, right? So they get a lot of revolutions on the ball. That all plays into how the ball reacts on the lane. And then the next level of difficulty, if you will, is not every lane's the same.
Right.
The lanes are, the oil or conditioner is put down on the lane differently in one bowling center to the next, or particularly as it relates to, competitive tournaments or even PBA tournaments, they have what they call patterns. And I think ESPN has done a good job, or not necessarily ESPN, but even any of the other broadcasts have now started doing a pretty good job of, they put a blue dye in the conditioner so that those of us watching on TV can actually see what the lane pattern looks like, what the conditioner pattern looks like. So you can see how far down the lane it goes. You can see kind of how it's shaped and whatever shape they've done with it, because there's a million variations. But it kind of helps, the layman watching a tournament or a PBA, finals event or whatever on TV, kind of understand that that's factoring into how that bowler is playing the lane, where they're throwing the ball, how they're throwing it, the hand position they're using. I mean, these guys on tour can do incredible things to bowling balls. I mean, just by changing hand position and arm swing and the physical part of throwing the bowling ball, they can adjust all of those different things to make the bowling ball act the way that they want to down the lane, ultimately with the goal of strike, right?
So, like, can a professional bowler, like, you know, can he hit a bowling ball like on a, like, you know, if you put like a Coke bottle out there, like he could just like, he could 9 times out of 10 hit it, like, or 10 times out of 10?
If you think of
How precise are they?
every board on a lane is 1 inch wide. Okay. So the most deadly accurate bowlers on tour can set the ball down within a board and a half of where they're actually setting the ball down on the lane every time. So, and then the second piece of that is, where is it down the lane? You know, you're mentioning, can they hit a dime, you know, down the lane? Again, a board or a board and a half.
Dang.
So within an inch or an inch and a half, front and back, is how accurate those guys are. It's incredible.
So where do mistakes happen for them? The pins just don't fall the way gravity, like it just an accident fall. Like where do they like miss their points? If they're so precise, where do they miss their points at? Does that make sense?
So it could be any one of those phases that I mentioned. It could be they didn't quite get the hand position they were looking for, you know, when
like
they released
shooting a basketball, kind
like
of
shooting a basketball, yep.
Yeah.
Or even with a pool cue. You know, if you think of a pool cue, where you're hitting the cue ball, you know, if you miss a centimeter up from where you're trying to strike that cue ball, it could do something different on the table, right? Well, same thing with a bowling ball. I mean, just the slightest tweak can make it do something different. The other important thing to remember is that the oil moves around on the lane. So as bowling balls travel down a lane, they are changing the lane. You know, they're changing the way that pattern is there. You know, they're pushing oil down the lane, which typically, you know, starts drying up the front part of the lane. So you'll see, even over the course of a finals telecast in the PBA, from match 1 to match 4, you'll see the right-handed bowlers typically start gravitating further and further left in most of the patterns, because the ball's hooking earlier and earlier as they break down. Now, all the TV lights and all that stuff make that happen faster than normal,
right?
Because it's hot. But you know, they start. You'll watch them. They'll get deeper and deeper on the lane, and now all of a sudden they've gone from playing fairly straight up the lane to now they're hooking the whole lane. You know, and they'll slow down. They'll slow the ball speed down to make sure the ball turns the corner and that kind of stuff. You'll start to notice those tweaks and changes as they go through. Sometimes the telecasters pick up on it and like say something about it, but most of the telecasters are accustomed to seeing it, so they don't always comment on it when they're doing it.
Yeah. When did you start bowling? You said you were 8.
I was competitively. I was 8.
Do you remember your first time kind of going to the bowling alley? Like, do you remember your first time bowling?
I don't remember.
What's your first memory of bowling?
My first memory was probably a birthday party when I was little.
Yeah, for sure, right?
I was like 4 or 5 years old. Yeah.
But your dad bowled, right?
My dad did bowl. Yes, I grew up in bowling alleys. Like I remember being in bowling alleys even at a younger age. But as far as my first time bowling, actually throwing the ball down the lane, my first memory was probably about 4 or 5 years old.
I think everybody starts at birthday parties, don't they?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I think it might have been my own, to be perfectly honest.
Your dad's like, I get a discount at the bowling alley. We're gonna have the birthday up there.
No, there's all kinds of stories that my parents have told me and my godparents have told me that of me, you know, sleeping under the table in the bowling alley while they were bowling league or whatever when I was, you know, 3-4 years old, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've been around bowling my entire life.
Have you bowled in some pretty sketchy bowling alleys?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
at the risk of hurting anyone's feelings, I'm not going to specifically call him out. But
okay, look, I'm not trying to be a jerk. Okay, but pretty much every bowling alley I've been in has been kind of sketch, right? So, what does a nice bowling alley look like? What's one that's like you're like, man, this is a nice ass bowling alley?
So,
they usually write cheese on the nachos, or what?
That's such a matter of opinion, quite honestly.
The nacho cheese?
That too.
Oh, okay.
But to classify whether it's a nice bowling alley or not, it depends on who you ask, because if you ask a league bowler or a competitive bowler, we're going to have one opinion, whereas a recreational bowler is going to have a totally different opinion of what's a nice bowling alley. Typically, I would say one that's, you know, reasonably clean, right? It's fairly clean, fairly well maintained. You know, a lot of league bowlers out there would tell you that a certain bowling alley, even though it might be clean, is garbage because they don't take care of the lanes.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're not concerned about the league bowler. They don't take care of the lanes well enough, blah, blah, blah. So you'll hear that a lot in the bowling world. I've definitely been in some extremely sketch bowling centers. I bowled a collegiate tournament in one of them.
Where?
Way back when. I don't want to say where because it'll be very obvious for anybody that might catch on. Because
okay. What made it? What can you tell me? What made it sketch?
well, I mean, we're there for a collegiate tournament, right? And so we've traveled a while to get there. And we walk in and the lanes were so bone dry.
Like the boards?
Yeah, like it felt like there was no oil out there at all. Like, I mean, it's like it's been open play for 2 days on these lanes and they haven't rerun them. And we're there for a collegiate tournament.
Okay, so what does that do to the lane? When you go to bowl, what does that do? It just sticks.
So if I go up there with a high performance ball and I try to throw it, it hooks immediately as soon as it hits the lane. It probably goes in the left gutter.
Oh, dang.
Right? You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, it becomes impossible, right? And several of us threw our first shots in practice, you know, warming up for this tournament. Now, you got to understand, these collegiate tournaments, they go all day. So they're like, I don't know. I can't even tell you how many games we'd bowl in a day, but you would bowl 4 or 5 games of qualifying. And then you go into Baker match play, which Baker just means you got each bowler on the team. You got 5 bowlers. Each bowler bowls 1 frame and then you repeat the cycle. So every bowler gets 2 frames in the game. And you might have a 3-game match, you know, and it might go on for 10 or 12 matches. You know, so you could be there from 8 in the morning until 5 or 6 at night, bowling all day, and the lanes don't get rerun while you're there, you know?
Yeah.
So they need to be prepared for that. Well, we walk in and literally the very first ball we threw, me and my buddy Andrew that we bowled together with, first ball we threw went dead left. And we were like, oh shit. So we're moving way inside, trying to find oil, doing all these things. And we're like, there's nothing out there. There is no oil on these lanes. So we immediately switched to plastic balls. And I think he actually ended up throwing a house ball at one point, which is like, you know, your standard bowling ball you'd find at the bowling alley. And it was just torture. That whole tournament was absolute torture, you know, because we're doing all these things that we don't normally have to do, don't normally even have to think about doing, just simply because they didn't prepare. You know, so that's probably one of the worst experiences in bowling I've ever had, was walking into that building and finding that. Now, as far as really sketch, where was I? I was in, can't remember if I was in New Jersey or New York. I was traveling for work, and I do this from time to time when I'm on a business trip or something. If I have extra time, I might go into a local bowling center and just check it out.
That's kind of cool.
It's fun sometimes, especially if I'm traveling alone. If I'm traveling with my team or whatever, not necessarily, but you know, when I'm there alone, I may go into a local bowling center and just check it out, see what's going on. Sometimes I'll find a league and I'll just shoot the shit with some of the bowlers or whatever. But I went into one, I think it was in New Jersey, and I was honestly fearful for my life. Like, I was really worried I wasn't walking out of there.
Why?
It was just very dark. Like the lighting was not there. And it's not because they were doing like cosmic bowling. It was just, it was just very dark. There was no lights, you know, and there were a whole bunch of people in there that looked a little rough, a little edgy, you know, and I
might not have been there for bowling.
Might not have necessarily been there for bowling, you know, and I just like, I didn't spend a whole lot of time there. I walked in one door and out the other because I was like, wow, this is not safe. You know, this is like I'm going to piss off the wrong person in here, I think. But, you know, it was kind of crazy. It was pretty sketch. It was definitely pretty sketch. And it was the area where it was located was probably not one I should have been in, to be perfectly honest.
Well, I mean, but what a unique perspective of cities that you go into bowling alleys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it kind of makes me want to do like a bowling alley tour, like just go to different cities and just go to bowling alleys in different cities.
That'd be a great YouTube channel.
I mean, but just to, yeah, I know what I'm saying. Just to see, because like, you know, like to my small point, like, you know, pretty much all the bowling alleys I've been into have been kind of in small towns. Like they're, you know, it's kids' birthday parties, a little bit of league stuff, and then something to do on a Friday kind of places. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, you know, the popcorn's stale, the nachos, the cheese is that cheese out of the big can. You know, that maybe they have hot dogs, beer is in a pitcher. You know, I mean, like that's the kind of places I've been to. You know,
Yeah, I mean, some of the coolest bowling centers I've been in are ones that are off the beaten path, which is why I do that when I travel. Sometimes I'm not necessarily going to the chain centers. You know, when I'm going to see like the historical places, or you know, down here in New Braunfels, you know, we've got 9-pin centers. You know,
what does that mean?
There's only a handful of them left.
What's a 9-pin center?
So 9-pin bowling is where, and most of the 9-pin centers are very, very, very small. So there might only be 4 lanes in the building. It's a very small building. Usually they still have manual pin boys back there setting up the pins, and the configuration rather than the triangle like 10-pin bowling, it's 9-pin. So it's kind of like 9-ball. It's in a diamond shape.
Mm-hmm.
And the rules are a little bit different. But the overall game is similar in that you're still using a standard size bowling ball. You're still, you know, hitting a standard size bowling pin. It's just a little twist on the game. So much fun. Oh my God. I did some of it when we were in college, you know, down in New Braunfels, and it's just so much fun. It's a blast. I honestly wish we had some up in Dallas, Fort Worth where I'm at, but that would be a fun experience. I think it would catch on if, you know, the thing now in the industry and where people think they can make money is creating these bowling lounges, right? And there's certainly a market for it. There's absolutely, every one I've ever been into is usually pretty busy, you know, but they're expensive, right? I mean, you're gonna drop a couple C notes. You go into one of those places and have food and drink and whatever, you know. But they're pretty cool spots. They're pretty cool places. There's some really, really great ones like in Manhattan. I've been to a couple of them in Manhattan that are really awesome. There's certainly some in Dallas and some of the other big cities, but there's another variation that I didn't mention. It's called candlestick bowling. So it's not a standard bowling pin. It's almost like a big tall stick almost.
No way. Is that the original? Was that an origin of bowling?
You know, my history is not that good to be able to tell you for sure if that's where it started. But it's definitely a variation of the game that is interesting. There's another one called duck pin bowling. So it's real small pins, usually on strings. But it's a full length bowling lane, and you're using a ball that's, you know, a mini ball that's like the size of your hand.
I mean, I feel like I've done something like that at Dave and Buster's.
Yeah, you go and Google it, and you'll see these guys get up there and they're throwing this thing 90 miles an hour down the lane.
No way.
And it's a standard size lane, so these little bitty pins are really far apart. You know, so it's not like in regular 10-pin bowling where you can, you know, you want to hit that 1-3 pocket if you're a right-hander at an angle, and that's your highest percentage chance of striking, right? And you know, there's a way that the ball goes through the pins and the pins hit each other and all. There's some science and physics to all that. But in duck pin bowling, it's just you want to hit it as hard as you can and scatter them as much as you can. Yeah, you know, it's an interesting game. I did actually bowled in a duck pin house. I think I was in Baltimore when I did it, and went into a duck pin house there because it's the first time I'd ever seen one. And that was pretty. It was either Baltimore or Indianapolis. I can't remember which two it was, but that was a lot of fun. That was an interesting twist on the game, and trust me, I suck at it at duck pin bowling. It was very humbling.
It's a totally different sport.
Totally different.
You know what I mean?
You know, similar concept, but totally different.
It's like a Major League Baseball player playing wiffle ball.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like try it.
Good luck hitting that one.
This final segment is brought to you by HeyJustBe.com. I believe that achieving balance in the mental, physical, and metaphysical aspects of your purpose through learning, serving, and creating can transform your life into one you truly enjoy living. Want to learn more? Visit www.heyjustbe.com.
So how I usually wrap this thing up is I ask people, what do you do to just be so you can be the best version of yourself for everybody else? So obviously bowling's big for you, right? What else do you do? Are you a reader at all? Do you read books?
I don't read much.
You listen to books?
Never really
You a listener?
have. No, I really don't much. I mean,
Do you podcast? You listen to podcasts? Oh man, like, totally. What else do you do besides bowling?
I mean, bowling's certainly a big part of my life. I love being out on a golf course. I'm an absolutely terrible golfer, terrible, but I love being out on the course. There's few places that are more relaxing for me than to be out on a course. You know, a nice day on a golf course with a buddy, you know, just shooting the shit and maybe drinking a few beers and riding in the cart and that kind of stuff. That's like my chill spot. That's my happy place.
You know, I will confirm that, but I will up you one where I just like going to golf courses with my friends. I don't play golf though.
Yeah.
I just drive the cart. And I just like, when they get out, I'm kind of like, ooh, I wouldn't hit that shot.
Most of my friends would probably tell you I should just be driving the car because I'm an absolutely terrible golfer.
I mean, like, it's not like I haven't played golf and I can play golf, but like, I'm just not a big fan of golf, but I am a big fan of driving carts on grass and like watching my friends play golf and then like being DJ, you know, like on the in-betweens and, you know, and just like hyping them up and going like, I think you can make this putt. You know what I mean? But don't freak out. Oh, and your wife just called. I'm just kidding. You know what I mean? Like, but I you know, being outside, hanging out with friends, getting a little bit of exercise, getting some sun, all that's really great, right?
Yeah, that's my favorite place. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. My wife and I celebrated our 10th anniversary last year in Hawaii.
Oh, fancy.
And we went to Maui for the, you know, a little bit more than the second half of our vacation. And she made sure that I got to play golf in Maui. Like, she set aside time for us in our schedule of what we were doing. She goes, you're going to go play golf and I'm going to drive the cart for you. And it was like one of the most awesome experiences. Cause literally I'm on this course and I'm overlooking the islands and I'm overlooking the bay and the water. And it's just so surreal. I mean, and we took a crap ton of pictures, but that was a truly amazing experience. I was really touched that she, you know, had that forethought and, you know, made sure that happened for me. That was pretty incredible.
I mean, you know, I can't remember the last time I talked about this, but you know, the unconditional support that my girlfriend gives for my Madden teams, you know, is very appreciated and I, you know, like when you care about something that your partner cares about and you put energy and emphasis behind that and go like, I want him to have a good time doing this. And I'm going to include myself. I'm going to drive the cart. I'm not going to play golf because I don't, but I'm going to do, you know, like, I mean, that kind of stuff makes a relationship. I think sometimes maybe this is just me, but guys have a harder time doing that for girls than girls doing that for guys. It feels like.
Agreed.
Girls are really good at like going like, oh, my husband would love it. But then guys are kind of like, well, I think she'd like a rifle. Something tells me she wants a new vacuum cleaner. And, you know, instead of
don't ever do that, guys. Guys out there, don't ever.
No, instead
do that.
of going like, you know what I think she would like. I think she would like a spa day, and probably not to hang out with me. You know what I mean? She probably want to go hang out with her girlfriends. You know, I bought my girlfriend tickets to go. She's a huge Depeche Mode fan. And I think it was for her birthday or something. I bought her tickets for her birthday, and I said, here's 2 tickets to Depeche Mode. I'm not going. Take whoever you want. Take it because her brother loves it, her sister loves it, her cousin loves it, and those are people that love it, right? And they can only experience that with her. And because I love her, because she means so much to me, and because I didn't want to pretend like I'm having a good time, take somebody that's really going to have a good time. I was like, take somebody, and then we can do something else together like that. But like, you know, I wanted her to truly enjoy a really cool gift that I knew she would like. Absolutely. And I think, you know, that sounds so bad to go to. Don't think that your wife or your spouse always wants to hang out with you, but like have some perspective of like, if you're going to go, just like your wife did, don't play golf. If you don't play golf, don't make it work. It's like shitty. No, you know, go have a good time and support them. Yep. You know, one of those bazaars that they have at these convention centers. It's like, you know, just a bunch of like knickknacks that all these women go to.
Craft shows.
Go with your wife to a craft show. You know what I mean? They serve alcohol there.
Usually.
Yeah, they're smart. You know what I mean? If they want women to buy their crafts, they will. You know what I mean? But did you have a couple of cocktails while you're there? Then you feel better.
100%.
Anything else? Are you just mainly sporting and golfing and bowling?
Yeah, I mean,
You and the girls, probably your daughters, y'all do stuff together. Y'all hang out.
we do. We've kind of developed over this year a little bit of a weekly tradition, but just because of our varying schedules. I've got my younger daughter is big time into gymnastics. She's in the gym 3 days a week for 3 hours at a time. I mean, it's pretty hardcore, gymnast, and she's doing quite well. And so there's, a day of the week, I think it's usually on Wednesdays, where my wife's an educator, so she's doing teacher stuff. And, my daughter's at the gym. That me and my older daughter will get to go out and have a date. So
yeah,
it's
amazing.
Like we do that like almost on a weekly basis. Sometimes we'll order in and just stay in the house, and we just don't feel like going out to eat. But, a lot of times we'll go out to eat. She loves Asian food. So she loves Japanese, and like we'll go to Ninja Kitchen or
whoa, what's Ninja Kitchen?
Oh,
is like hibachi?
Ninja Kitchen is a
This is in Dallas Fort Worth. Oh, Waxahachie, is that where y'all are at?
I'm in Mansfield.
Okay.
I'm in Mansfield. So it's not far from my house. It's just down the street, but they're a chain, I believe. And I hadn't heard of them until this one opened. And, they're a ramen restaurant.
Okay.
But they also do fresh sushi, like
fancy.
hand rolled and everything sushi. And then they have yakisoba, which is noodles.
Oh, yep. I like that.
Yakisoba, and then udon noodles as well. So they kind of run the gamut.
Mm-hmm.
And they do some rice dishes too, but she loves that yakisoba, man. When she found that, she fell in love with it. So she's always asking for that, She's a big hibachi fan too. Like there's a couple of hibachi restaurants near us that we go to pretty often. That she just loves hibachi, fried rice and extra egg. It's always got to be that extra egg, man. She makes a point of that.
Last time I was at a hibachi restaurant, it was in Mexico.
I'm not sure I'd go to a hibachi restaurant.
Okay, like, let me preface the same way. We were at a resort.
Okay,
what I mean? It was one of those where they had like themed restaurants. You know what I mean? So, but surprise, the guy that was doing the hibachi was Hispanic. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't an Asian guy.
Yeah, it's interesting how, I'm not educated enough on this to know why it's different, but hibachi and teppanyaki are essentially the same thing. I don't really know what the difference is.
What's teppanyaki?
I would call it hibachi. But I was recently in Las Vegas, and I was there for work and then Nationals bowling tournament at the same time. But we were also celebrating our 11th anniversary, so my wife flew out. But one of the restaurants that we went to that was in the resort we were staying at was teppanyaki. They called it teppanyaki.
But I mean, they're cooking it on the flat grill.
They're cooking it on the flat grill, just like you would think of a hibachi. I was like, I don't understand the difference, but whatever.
That just sounds like
I'd heard the term before, but I never really knew why is that different than hibachi? What's different about it to make you call it teppanyaki? But
either A, it's a different form of Asian, Japanese versus Chinese or something. Mm-hmm. Or B, this resort's just pulling the wool over your eyes and they're just making up words to make it seem like you got some fancy hibachi thing.
No, I had definitely heard it before, but I never really understood the difference. And I didn't bother educating myself while I was there, but it was interesting.
Do they do the fire volcano?
They did.
Okay, so it's hibachi. Yeah,
it was straight up hibachi to me.
Oh, James, hey, man, I appreciate you driving down here all the way from Dallas, outside of Dallas, coming out and doing this. Thank you so much. If you don't mind, I usually ask people to give me a hug. You can push that microphone out. Give me a hug. Oh, man.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, awesome.